Information and communications technology and engineering are two of the fastest growing fields in Canada. Zhenzhen and Rochelle will first tell us about ICTC and ETalent Canada before walking us through an online tour of the ETalent portal, including where we can find provincial and national data, career options, and current vacancies. This ICTC portal has been developed specifically for non-regulated occupations. Jamie will then tell us about Engineers Canada and their online portal, EngScape, before giving us a virtual tour. The EngScape portal has been developed specifically for regulated occupations within the field of engineering. Thanks so much for joining us today, Zhenzhen and Rochelle.
Thank you, Hannah Marie. Hello, everyone. My colleague Rochelle and myself are from ICTC. We are a not-for-profit organization that has two business focus. One is we conduct the research and the policy development for all the technological innovations happening in different industries. The second focus ICTC does is to provide different programs for immigrants, youth, women, and indigenous people. From ICTC's this part, we are going to have two sessions. The first session, I'm going to share with you how ETalent Canada, the online portal, is going to provide you what kind of information. The second part, my colleague Rochelle is going to share with you what other immigrant initiatives that ICTC has been conducting. So what is ETalent Canada? The ETalent Canada portal is a unique online interactive map that will provide Canadians access to dynamic labor market information. So if you are an immigrant who are very interested in working in those non-regulated ICT occupations, you definitely should check on this online portal. The information is provided. I will show you in detail later in the online tour, virtual tour. It will show you what kind of city you can choose if you are interested in a typical ICT job, what's the salary expectation, and so on. For ETalent Canada, we feature three very powerful online functions. The first of all, we provide both provincial and national data. They are all from Statistical Canada, the Labor Force Survey and National Household Survey. The second part is we provide the most up-to-date vacancies for different occupations, and we are both based on National Occupational Code. I think many immigrants, you all heard about the NOC code. The third function is we provide a very comprehensive picture of different ICT jobs, the whole picture, the career path, what kind of online program or educational program that you can take. Now let's explore the ETalent Canada portal. So this is our ETalent Canada online portal. You can find both national data and also provincial data, and also those major cities that has a lot of ICT employers. For example, just a quick, if you're interested in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, this area, you just simply have a quick click. It will show you the overview of this area's ICT employment. It will also give you some statistics about the joblessness or employment, the top 5 jobs in demand, also a very overview of the area demographics.
And as Zhenzhen is showing us this fantastic tool, we just want to draw your attention to the fact that you can actually maximize the section of the presentation screen, the top right, just so that you have a clearer view of exactly what we're seeing. You can make it full screen that way.
So any other cities, if you are particularly interested in, simply click. Then it will provide you all the information. As I mentioned, the second very powerful function we provide is the vacancies function. So basically, ICTC, we created this online job crawlers that we crawl all the ICT jobs from 5 job websites, for example, Indeed and Monster. It will provide you the most updated vacancies from different companies here. And again, you can find the job by city, by province, or you can simply just type the keyword here. The last function I mentioned is the career. So if you are interested in ICT jobs, but you are not 100% sure what that is about. So this part, the careers will show you a very comprehensive picture of all the perspectives towards this National Occupational Code. For example, you can find the job description here, what kind of job duties you are going to do, and what kind of the educational requirements and experience that is required. For sure, there is a salary expectation here. So after read all the information here, if you're interested in this type of job, it will lead you to the job bank website to show the job availability here. If you feel you need more training education, it will also show you all the online resources and also the programs. So we also have other functions like publication, if you're interested in some typical technology innovation topic. We put all our current publications here, and they are all free to get access to. I think I'm done for this part. I will pass over to my colleague, Rochelle.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about ICTC's other immigration initiatives. So the goal of these initiatives is to integrate global talent into the Canadian ICT sector by developing programs, resources, and tools for IEPs and employers. We have partnerships with employers, immigrant serving and community agencies, and governments, which allows our initiatives to help Canadian organizations build and sustain an inclusive workforce. ICTC offers a variety of tools for employers and IEPs, which include employer and IEP resources and guides, workshops online, which is an e-learning tool that provides essential knowledge about working in Canada, and resources that develop technical, business, language, and workplace communication competencies. There is also a language assessment learning tool available. My Career Map is a competency-based self-assessment tool for IEPs looking to improve their understanding of Canadian ICT workplace culture, communication, and competencies. IEPs are provided with guides and tips that help them with resume writing, interviewing, and workplace communications. There is also information provided on provincial labor market trends that will increase users' competitive advantage. ICTC also offers overseas pre-arrival services and a bridge training program. ILEX is a bridge training program offered in Toronto by ICTC. ILEX is designed to prepare internationally educated IT professionals for the Canadian workforce through 3 weeks of in-class training, followed by a 3-month coaching relationship with an industry professional. ILEX participants gain the knowledge and experience they need to fully and easily enter the Canadian labor market. For the past 5 years, ILEX has a success rate of over 85% of graduates having landed jobs in ICT. The goals of the ILEX program are to help IEPs successfully enter Canadian society socially, economically, and culturally, to increase their awareness of their strengths and weaknesses in the Canadian labor market, develop a sense of a career path in their field, and lastly, enhance their self-esteem and confidence. ICTC's overseas pre-arrival service is called GoTalent. It's a program that matches immigrants who are coming to Canada with employers who have open positions and connects employers with IEPs who are in the process of coming to Canada as permanent residents. The program is meant to help employers recruit and meet their talent needs and provide IEPs with an in-depth training and services to make sure they are job ready upon arriving in Canada. With an estimated 182,000 ICT jobs that will need to be filled in Canada by 2019, this is a service that gives Canadian employers an edge in the race for ICT talent. After enrolling in the program, IEPs are offered a variety of services, including a labor market orientation, resume review, interview preparation, one-on-one guidance, and other integration help. GoTalent allows employers first-hand access to recruit qualified talent candidates before they arrive, which reduces barriers related to hiring international talent. So that's just a basic overview of the immigration services provided by ICTC. For more information on these services, you can visit our website or follow up with us by emailing talent@ictc/ctic.ca. Thank you for your time, and I am now going to pass it back to Shauna Marie.
Thank you so much, Zhenzhen and Rochelle. Those are definitely programs that would be helpful for information and communications technology professionals. And what a great tool that ETalent portal is, especially for a non-regulated field such as ICTC. This type of portal can be useful for internationally trained professionals. Now I'd like to pass things over to Jamil Ricci from Engineers Canada. Jamie is here to share the EngScape portal specifically for professionals seeking employment in the engineering field. Because engineering is a regulated profession, a tool like this can give foreign-trained professionals great insights. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Shauna Marie, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm excited to share Engineers Canada's newest resource for internationally educated engineering graduates, EngScape, as well as the Roadmap to Engineering, a pre-arrival support site. First, I'm going to start by telling you a little bit more about Engineers Canada and the engineering profession in Canada. In Canada, like many other countries, engineering is a regulated profession. This means to practice engineering in Canada, you are required to register with a provincial or territorial regulator and acquire a license, or a PEng. The PEng is the professional engineering designation, and it allows you to practice engineering and call yourself an engineer. It also allows you to access to Engineers Canada's affinity program. This includes home and auto insurance, term life and accident insurance, and professional liability insurance. Engineers Canada is the association that is owned by the 12 provincial and territorial regulators, which represent 290,000 members of the profession in Canada. We provide insurance, financial, and other benefits through our affinity programs, which I just mentioned. We monitor the state of the profession, including enrollment, membership, and labor market outcomes. We facilitate international and interprovincial mobility. We accredit undergraduate engineering programs, develop professional practice and qualification guidelines, promote the interests of the engineering profession, and promote diversity in the profession. About a year and a half ago, Engineers Canada and ICTC entered a partnership to develop EngScape, which is based on the ETalent platform that was just shared with us. It captures the state of the engineering landscape and has been available since June this year. I'm going to now take you on a tour of EngScape. So when you access EngScape, you'll see that the first page is similar to the first page of ETalent. You can investigate municipality and provincial labor market information on this map. So for example, I'm in Ottawa right now. So if I look at Ottawa, we'll get the same kind of information. We'll have an overview of the city, information about the city, including engineering employment, jobs in demand specific to engineering in that city, as well as demographics and salary information. Now, a lot of this information can be found in the Data by Province or Territory tab. So you'll see all of the Canadian provinces and territories listed here. So I'll invite you to investigate that on your own because a lot of it is similar to ETalent. Interesting to you might be the Data by Discipline tab. You'll find information about the 14 different types of engineering as identified by the federal government through the National Occupation Classification. Something special about this is that each Data by Discipline section starts with a profile of an engineer who's working in their field. You can get a better idea of what it is like to practice your type of engineering in Canada by reading these descriptions. So for example, I clicked on chemical engineering, and you can read about Siobhan Dooley and what got her interested in engineering, what she does as a chemical engineer in Canada, and have a little bit of better picture of what it's like to work as an engineer in Canada. You'll also find descriptions of the fields of engineering. So this is our example of the discipline description for chemical engineers. You can find information about typical job duties, so what you can expect might be your working life in Canada for that particular discipline. You can also find information about a career outlook, so what you can expect over the next 5 to 10 years for your discipline of engineering, as well as some other data and information about salary expectations for your discipline of engineering. So from here, you can go to the Find a Job tab, which I think will be of great interest to all of you. It's much like the one Zhenzhen shared with us on ETalent, where you can search for a particular type of engineering. So again, say you're a chemical engineer, you can type chemical into that and filter the search results. Or you can filter by a jurisdiction. If you know you want to settle in Vancouver, you can search Vancouver, British Columbia, and look for jobs in that area. It's a great start to get an idea of what job postings look like, what is expected for different types of engineering in Canada. Next, I'd like to take you through one of our other resources, which is the Roadmap to Engineering. There's a lot of information on this that will be valuable to people looking to come to Canada and work as engineers prior to their arrival. The roadmap is a helpful resource and to learn about this, and it has tips and information about working in the Canadian environment, as well as tips for the application and interview process. The Find Work in Engineering section will give you information about how to apply for those jobs, what to expect at a Canadian workplace, as well as different information about frequently asked questions, what kind of information you might need prior to that, as well as information about immigrating to Canada as an engineer. Something that we're particularly proud of is our academic information tool. So there's two places to find this. You can click on either of these spots. And the academic information tool provides a comparison of your undergraduate engineering education, either in your home country or wherever you studied, to a Canadian undergraduate engineering education. So you're able to learn more about the process of licensure through this tool. It also allows you to go through the comparison live. So we'll do that right now. So for example, if you studied in India, something should come down, and let's pretend that you graduated in 1999. And you went to school at Punjab College of Engineering and Technology. You did a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering degree. And like our example before, let's pretend you studied chemical engineering. You did this degree full-time. You can now check your education and compare it to a Canadian undergraduate. Because we don't have an agreement with this institution, you'll find an information such as this, which tells you that you'll be required to pass examinations to meet the academic requirements for licensure. And you can read this on your own for your own institution, your own sample example. And it'll provide you information that you should go through prior to leaving your home country. It's most recommended, so you can have access to your documents, translation, descriptions of the courses that you took prior to leaving. And in our experience, it's a lot easier to do that before you come to Canada. So I hope you've enjoyed the tour of both of our sites, EngScape and the Roadmap to Engineering. You can find the URLs to both of those at the bottom of this slide. I would encourage you, if you have any questions, to contact us at info@engineerscanada.ca, and that will make sure your email gets to the right person. Or particularly, what's probably most helpful to you is to visit both of those sites. And thank you so much. And back to you, Jean-Marie.
Thanks so much, Jamie. That was a great virtual tour. I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, will be exploring more after the webinar. As we've been listening to our presenters, we've had a lot of activity in our question and answer and our chat section. So let's jump right into our first question for ICTC. What is the application process like for the IWES program? And for those of you who are just joining, IWES stands for Integrated Work Experience Strategy Program. Zhenzhen or Rochelle?
So the application process begins with the completion of the online application form, which requires an upload of your most recent resume and your CLB assessment results, or the day on which you have scheduled your CLB assessment to take place. Once the application is completed, our staff determine your eligibility for the program. If you are eligible, you will be called in for an interview. After the interview, we decide if you have met all the necessary criteria, and if so, invite you to participate in the program. You are then provided a link to use and make a payment for the program fee, which is $399 plus HST, which totals to $450.87. Once that has been completed, your seat is reserved and the pre-course materials are sent to you.
Okay, great. We've had a lot of questions as well about immigrating to Canada, in talking about what are some steps that people can take before they arrive to have a better chance of career success once they actually land in Canada.
Thanks for that question. This is Jamie from Engineers Canada. So we really advise you to go to both the Roadmap and EngScape pre-arrival. What's important when you come to Canada for engineering is that you'll need to be licensed. So you can do that once you arrive, but it's really helpful to get the information up front before you leave your home country, because it is easier to get all the documentation in order that you do need. When you come to Canada, or before you come to Canada, you can check in on what you will be required to get that licensure. It might mean you need to take more time working because there is a requirement for the amount of time you've worked. It might mean that you need to pass some exams. But when you have that license, you can call yourself an engineer, you can work in engineering. If prior to getting that license, you can work as an engineer in training, an EIT, or an MIT, a member in training. And that would be through, again, those provincial or territorial regulators to get that designation as well, and to work under the guidance of a professional engineer once you arrive. But it's really highly recommended that you do all of that work up front before you leave your home country, so you know where to land, what kind of jobs to look for, where you're going to be in the licensure stream, because that is a very important step.
As for ICTC, because most of the jobs that here is non-regulated, so I would recommend those immigrants who haven't arrived to visit IRCC, the Immigration Canada's website, to say under which immigration stream you are in, because the ICT sector, most of the jobs are not regulated as engineering. So definitely go to IRCC's website.
Great, thank you for those answers. We have a couple of people who'd like to know what is a coach and how does coaching work as part of the IWES program?
Hi, so this is Rochelle. So to answer that question, a coach is a corporate professional who is trained in working with individuals to guide them towards meeting their unique goals, whether it be to find a job, retain a job, or achieve any other goals that they may have created for themselves. At the end of the 3-week in-class portion of the IWES program, there is a coach matching event. During this event, each participant is matched with a coach. They then begin a 3-month coaching relationship with a minimum of 3 hours of coaching per month for 3 months. The design of that relationship is created between the participant and the coach.
And I know you had mentioned that IWES is only offered in Toronto, so where could somebody who is outside of Toronto or even potentially pre-arrival find information about similar programs just outside of Toronto or outside of Canada?
Well, there are some links on our website that you could visit of other organizations that offer programs in different provinces, but the IWES, like you mentioned, is offered only in Toronto for the time being.
So we have a question about a specific profession. Is software engineering considered a regulated profession in Canada?
Hey, this is Jamie again. So you picked on probably the hardest part of regulation and which discipline is really tricky. So in some instances, software engineering you will require a PEng, and some instances you won't. It would probably fall more in line with my colleagues here. So it really does depend what kind of software engineering you're doing, who your employer is. The reason engineering is regulated in Canada is to protect the public. So it's really easy to understand why that would be in the case of civil engineers building bridges. We need to make sure our bridges are safe. But when software engineering came around, it was a little bit trickier to figure out if it should be regulated or not and how it should be regulated. So it really depends on what you're doing, where you're working. Again, those provincial and territorial regulators will determine that at their level, whether your role needs to or does require a PEng or is eligible for a PEng. So it's definitely something that's very specific to the individual and the jurisdiction they're working in.
So I think that brings up a really interesting point, Jamie, about sort of the changing nature of all of these professions as the world in which we operate is working. So I'd like to ask a broader question about what are some of the key trends that you each are seeing in your industry, and maybe changes to regulations or changes to specific occupations that are appearing in your professions.
So for the trends, or if you want to say if one specific national occupation code, for example, software engineer, actually you can look for like ICTC's website. We have done the Outlook 2020 to forecast those job trends and everything. Another resource, very solid resource, is from Statistics Canada. They also publish about labor market information. So either ICTC website and the Statistics Canada website are two good resources. With ICTC, our forecast projections and also trends review is specifically for ICT professionals, so information and communications technology. For StatCan, they have broader resources, trends, and everything.
Yeah, I think that the 20-year projection report would be very interesting for internationally trained professionals who are currently working in the field, but also perhaps to people who are considering getting into the field and who might be impacted by some of those changes 20 years down the line. Jamie, anything that you can add?
So I think just what's changing in our landscape of engineering, because of oil prices having dropped fairly recently, we specifically in Alberta are looking at less popular employment there. It's a less popular place, but that's really caused manufacturing to come back. We also, given our current government and some things that have been going on in Canada, if you're tuned into current events, innovation and climate change have been really hot topics right now, and we're seeing a lot of growth in both of those areas. And of course, I'm sure all of you listening can think of how you relate to that specifically and what your contribution could be towards those two things.
So how would these portals potentially be of benefit to international candidates who maybe do not yet have a work permit or permanent residency in Canada? Could they still use these as research tools to prepare for coming?
Yes, so this is Zhenzhen again. As I just quickly showed the ETalent Canada portal, we have the career section. That function, if you click, is either you are in Canada or not. For those who are interested in this field, ICT field, it's definitely a good resource for you to see what's the job trends like here, which city are the most popular city for the ICT professionals. And also, I mentioned briefly about publications there. So we have different technology changes happening in different industries. So those are, I think, is the up-to-date information in all industries. So if you are interested in just have broad will about what is happening in Canada in ICT professions, in ICT industry, that's definitely a good place to look into.
We have another question here about becoming licensed in Canada. This would, I guess, specifically apply to the engineering field and how long it would take to become licensed in Canada. I know this is something, Jamie, that you touched on, that situations are very specific to individuals based on their education and employment experience. But is there any sort of guidelines that you can give people around how long it may take someone to be licensed in Canada?
Thanks, Jean-Marie. You got that exactly right, that it really does depend on the individual and their circumstances, where they're coming from, where they were educated, what kind of agreements we have with their home institutions or their countries. If they're licensed already in those home countries and we have an agreement with them, it'll go a lot quicker. And if they don't, it will take longer. If you want to consider somebody who was educated in Canada and has worked in Canada and them getting their license, so in Canada we have those accredited programs. Those are usually 4 or 5 years in length. So after that, the individual would have an undergraduate degree in engineering. They then would have to work in the field of engineering for 4 years in most jurisdictions. Some of those programs, they might do co-ops or internships during their undergraduate, so might shorten that time after graduating. But generally, it's about 4 years of working, and then they have to go through the licensure application as well. So that takes some time. It fills out, you have to fill out paperwork, you have to apply. It's best to do it during those 4 years that the person's working. Again, if the person has experience in their home country, that might be acceptable as well. It would really depend on the regulator, their experience, if it qualifies as engineering experience or not. So unfortunately, there isn't a good answer to that question. But in the Canadian environment, it takes a minimum of 4 years typically.
So the best option for somebody who's trying to find more specific and sort of individually tailored information, I'm guessing, would be to approach the regulatory body for the province or territory in which they would like to work?
Definitely. I think once you've kind of narrowed down what province or territory you hope to work in, look through the roadmap and EngScape to prepare yourself to understand as much as you can what you're going to be facing, and definitely give those regulators a call or an email and get information about what it's going to be like after you settle.
So we have a question here about bridging programs and whether these bridging programs are worthwhile for internationally trained professionals to pursue, or whether they should instead focus on getting additional industry certifications instead. Do you have any comment, either Jamie, Zhenzhen, or Rochelle, on the benefits of participating in bridging programs?
Bridging programs, they definitely make a difference on your resume and you as a participant. Bridging programs allow you to have a holistic approach and experience in the Canadian workplace culture. You might be able to have an experience on how Canada's workplace culture is and integrate yourself into the workplace. So those are kind of the benefits of doing the bridging program.
So another question that we have here is, I have several years of experience outside of Canada. Where can I find out if my education and my experience from my home country would be recognized in Canada? Are employers interested in internationally trained professionals?
You can use that tool on the Roadmap to Engineering website to check your academic credentials and how they compare. If you'll get information whether once you arrive if you'll have to go through an examination process or what would be next for you on that front. As far as your work experience, that's something that the regulator decides, and so it would be important to contact them, and you would go through that process. Also, they would check your time that you've worked during the licensure process itself. So they each have their own specific way of doing it, so I can't really tell you more about it than that, but I can say that definitely employers are looking for internationally educated engineering graduates to fill a labor market need that is very important in Canada.
This is Zhenzhen from ICTC again. So I just showed the ETalent Canada portal. Under the careers section, there is actually a part that you can find, for example, if you are a software developer and you find this is your job title, under that national code is a broader collection of the job titles, then it will show you actually what are the expectation requirements from Canadian employers. And then if you think you don't have this qualification, certain certificate, then under the education section, you can find resources to get yourself be qualified.
I know this is something that we get a lot. Do you provide specific job placements? And is there any guarantee of finding employment if participants in the webinar use these online tools?
So for engineers, we don't help or assist with job placement. That's up to the individual. And there's absolutely no guarantee, unfortunately. I would love to be able to say there is, but there is not. But what we are trying to do is set you up as best as possible, so when you are thinking about coming to Canada or when you arrive, you're as well prepared as you could be. That's our intent. So hopefully we're helping you get there.
This is Rochelle from ICTC. So for both of our immigration programs, we don't guarantee job placement. So for the Go Talent, we do put you in touch with employers who have job postings, but you go through their interview process, and then it's between the candidate and the employer on whether you would be a good fit for the organization and things like that. So we find you an opportunity, but we don't guarantee the job placement. With the IWES program, there is a success rate of our graduates, 85% finding jobs in ICT. The staff of the IWES program provides support throughout, and Go Talent also throughout and after the program, all with the same goal of each graduate landing a position that matches their experience. And we also take every opportunity to connect our participants with open positions that our employers may have available.
Great, thank you. As sort of a follow-up to that question, what would you say is the biggest success factor for an individual trying to find employment in these fields in Canada? Is there one thing that you think sort of stands out most in terms of people achieving high levels of career success?
I would say if there's a biggest thing, it really just depends. I mean, it's a combination of the experience and the cultural fit and all of that goes into hiring somebody at an organization. So I don't think I'd be able to give a specific answer to that question.
I think the same is true for us, that in engineering there really depends on the individual and the circumstances, but there isn't one really key thing that you really have to make sure that there's so many different things to be concerned about. Definitely licensure is an important step, and that's something not to overlook, but to land those first jobs, really it's the tools that we provided and practicing that sort of stuff. It's just all really important. So there's not that one thing that'll really...
So really just a combination of a lot of different strategies, maybe some networking, you know, looking into different professional associations that you could join or talk to different people, perhaps mentoring. I think a lot of things that have been mentioned throughout this webinar.
Yeah, I would agree with something that's definitely helpful is that networking and volunteering piece. Our regulators often need volunteers. That's like something. There's also lots of different associations related to engineering. There's chapters. There's all kinds of things like that. Also networking, that's a really important thing that you mentioned that's kind of difficult to do when you're not local, but it's an important part of any career in Canada to get that first job, but also to get that second job and third job after that if you're interested in moving on and moving upward.
Yeah, I know we did a webinar last month, and one of the presenters had mentioned, especially for a pre-arrival audience, which I think covers a lot of our audience today, LinkedIn can be a huge source of networking potential. You can do a lot of research on key figures or thought leaders in your field and try to connect with people on LinkedIn by sending a really thoughtful, tailored message explaining to the person why you're interested in connecting with them, especially if you have concrete plans. If you do have a work visa and you know that you'll be coming to Canada shortly, you could ask to set up an informational session. Ask if you can take them out for a coffee, something like that to really integrate yourself into the field in which you'll be joining once you arrive in Canada. So are there any last thoughts from either Engineers Canada or ICTC before we wrap up our question and answer section here?
I think from ICTC, we would strongly encourage those immigrants who haven't landed in Canada yet to really visit the online portal, like actually from both of us, because it's really a one-stop, like a website that can provide you a whole picture of what is the ICT professional's job and also ICT industry, what's the trends and everything. So definitely play around with the online portal. You can get a lot of information there.
And the same from Engineers Canada. Definitely use our resources that we provided. And I guess best of luck on your journey. It's an exciting time.
As we conclude, I'd also like to thank Zhenzhen, Rochelle, and Jamie for joining us today. Thank you as well to Gelik Badadzang, our Communications Manager, and Sarah Hua, Coordinator for Global Talent Bridge Canada.